Hello and welcome to the OmniTalk Fast Five, sponsored by Takeoff and the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. The OmniTalk Fast Five is the fastest, funniest, and most fervently insightful rundown of all the week's top news in retail, and also with the best alliteration. If you want boring, go someplace else. I am your host, Chris Walton, joined as always by Ann Mazinga and my new favorite acronym, ETI, Emma the Intern. And I got to tell you guys, and Emma, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I'm like Pointer Sisters excited here today. Like, I am so excited. We have some special guests with us. We have Kristen Kohler-Burrows and David Ritter from the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Great to be here.
We're excited to have you guys. This is going to be a fun one. This is the first time we've had this many guests. This is like, we basically have a game show happening right now. It's amazing. I love it.
We do. There's like things going on all over the place right now. This is going to be such a blast. So for those that are frequent listeners to the show, and maybe those that aren't familiar, A&M, these guys are our sponsors. So Kristen and Dave they basically are working with us each and every week on this podcast. You'll know from our frequent segment of Put Us on the Spot. These two, believe it or not, are the ones who are putting us on the spot each week. They're the ones who are making us sweat and actually having me have Emma, the intern, answer any questions that I just can't figure out. Well, I'm always sending them her way. They're the ones to thank for this. And so today we thought, hey, why not turn the tables on them, get them on the podcast, and ask each of them what is a put you on the spot question that maybe they can shed some light on something that might be top of mind for us. So I'm pumped. I'm thrilled. And what do you think here? You got any advice for them before we get started?
Oh, just have fun and I don't know, be ready for Chris to say something ridiculous about 80s movies references that no one else knows about. But hey, I mean, we started getting on this podcast with talking about Paul Reiser, so I feel like they're well prepared.
We did. Before we started, just to warm ourselves up for everyone listening, we actually tried to guess Paul Reiser's age, which, believe it or not, Kristen nailed it right on the nose. 65 years young as of March 30th. Emma, the intern, what are your expectations here? Scale of 1 to 10. Like, what are you expecting here from Dave and Kristen? Are you like on the 10 side? You more in the middle, like on a 5? Where are you going with this?
11. I think it'll be
11.
fun.
Wow. Nice. I like the pandering. That's pretty good. Dave, how about you? You ready? Got your game face on?
Oh yeah. Love listening every week and frankly putting you on the spot. So a little nervous, but ready to rock.
No, that's awesome. Not to be nervous. How about you, Kristen? You feeling in character?
I mean, the tables are turned. And I mean, I have to say, I've got a little sweat on the brow. So, I'm feeling a little nervous, shaking here in my chair.
No, this is going to be good. And it's great to have you guys. And we appreciate your support so much. I think it also does beg the question too, how many HBS grads does it take to record a podcast? I think that's a new question that we're all exploring here together, the three of us too. So let's get to it. All right. So in today's Fast Five, we're going to debate Best Buy's new subscription test, Starbucks' new reusable cup program, Nordstrom's market strategy, and Amazon's at least rumor that they are going to explore discount outlet stores. But first, we're going to start with Harry's and their $155 million raise this week and put Dave on the spot right in the beginning. All right, so for those that didn't hear, Harry's raised $155 million in Series E financing this week, bringing its valuation to about $1.7 billion. And that's money that it says it will use to acquire or invest in other great brands. So Dave, my question for you, what do you think of this announcement? What are we seeing here? Is this big news and the making of maybe like the next, big CPG, say a P&G, Unilever, or is this just a lot of money signifying not that much at all? What's your take?
Well, great question. And I think you could probably go both ways with this. But I mean, I think the first thing to do is just acknowledge that the Harry's team has done a pretty amazing job of stealing share in the shave market. And getting, I think it's 10,000 stores of distribution at this point. That said, the shave market's declining and has a lot of margin pressures. So I personally think that Harry's capabilities and ability to kind of target millennial shoppers makes them a great fit to disrupt faster growing, more profitable personal care categories. Think skin, hair care, shower and bath. I mean, even deodorant. But I don't think that's the story here. While all of that's true,
okay.
I think today's announcement has a lot more to do with the FTC. I think by intervening in the Edgewell's and Harry's acquisition, they removed a major exit strategy for small, innovative CPG brands. I frankly think today's announcement is about building a financial war chest that'll be followed by a bunch of acquisitions and an eventual IPO. I think this is the first step for Harry's, frankly, in shifting their strategy to provide their venture capital investors a liquidity event and as soon as possible. I think there's a lot of frustration coming out of the failure in the Edgewell deal and the inability to monetize the investment.
This makes a lot of sense, especially, we met with Nielsen last week, Chris, and if you remember, they were talking about how the shave category is one of the biggest disruptors to retailers, like that recurring, I'm going into the store to pick up my blades again this month, like that the disruption of D2C brands in this category is really changing so much more down the line too, like the ripple effect of that, where people are going for these repeat purchases. And so I think that if we see brands like Harry's continue to expand into these categories, there's no telling kind of what could come from that and what other disruptions actual retailers are going to see from it. But you look like you are not all in on this by.
No, I don't know. Okay. Right, I think hugely disruptive category. And here's where I'm at so far in the conversation. I think hugely disruptive category, right? Like in terms of what it's meant for retail, when you look at them, Dollar Shave Club, everybody. I think David's point's dead right. Like you've got this whole situation here of how do you pay back the investors given everything that's been going on, and what are the options given what happened with Edgewell and not being able to move forward on that side of things. But the question for me is, you're still throwing a lot of money at the belief that these guys can basically do the same thing again in other categories, basically essentially become a house of different brands under the portfolio. Kristen, what do you think on that? Like, are you buying that they're able to do that they're going to be able to do that in the long run? Because if they are, this is a really different model for how, CPGs can be built and who's going to be strong going forward.
Look, I have a pretty strong opinion that, where the synergies are going forward is around data and analytics and a customer. So yes, in terms of becoming a house of brands, in particular, if you're targeting like the same customer, like, look, I'm going to go after me. Right, I'm a woman, women 50 plus. I'm going to own her across every single touch point in her life, from health, beauty, fitness needs. To me, then you're really getting leverage over the data and analytics around that, and you can build out a portfolio of brands that really serves her.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually, and no, I'm not skeptical of this. I actually think there's something here, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show, but not that much. Whereas, we talk about the retail disruption, and I've been writing about this a lot on social media, but I actually think what we're going to see here too is there's a big CPG disruption coming too, in terms of who the power players are. And I think it's what Kristen said, is these people know how to take certain products in certain areas to market. And as long as they stay laser focused on that, there's a lot that they can build around that. But you look at some of the legacy companies like General Mills, they're having to bring this, like here locally, like they're having to bring some of this talent in to make this kind of thing happen more regularly for them. So I think you're going to see, I think there's a lot of room for this to happen even further here. But Dave, what's your last word?
My last word is, if you look at the Edgewell transaction, part of the negotiations was that Harry was going to take over Edgewell Americas, everything from HR to the old school Playtex, et cetera, brands. So, I think that stepping back and looking at that gives you a real forward-looking perspective and how CPG is thinking about introducing innovation and innovation leadership. It's no longer just about products.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great point too. Like, I think it's easier to learn traditional retail than it is for a traditional retailer to learn how to be a digital retailer, or same with CPG too. I think so. Anne, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I agree completely. I think Dave is putting some really great thoughts out, that, and especially just having the deep knowledge of the inner workings of that deal, that I don't think people are capturing that part. People are thinking of like the consumer facing, like, oh, this is cool, and they can take on all these brands. And like, yeah, if I'm going to buy, the Gen Z audience cares about what the brand looks like and what they stand for and all these things. Like, they're focused on that part of it. I don't think that we're hearing as much about what Dave brings to the conversation. So Dave, we're already glad that you're here. You've already validated yourself. Kristen, you too. We've got, it's only going to go up from here, Chris. I think we should.
Pressure's on you, Kristen.
Actually, the biggest thing is I'm really scared what the put you on the spot question is going to be for me next week. Like that's what I'm freaked out about already. But
Right.
Unfortunately, we're off next week, so it'll be 2 weeks. But all right, let's move to the next story. Emma, you've got the next one, right?
Yes. So Best Buy is testing out a new membership program with perks like unlimited tech support from the Geek Squad, exclusive membership pricing, and free shipping. The program is called Best Buy Beta, and it's going to cost $199.99 per year. So I think this is a great idea. I'm surprised it took so long. However, that price is a little steep for me to not offer something like free 2-day delivery or even same day delivery. So I'm curious to hear what everyone else's thoughts are.
Okay, so yeah, so let's set the table too. So like it sounds like there may be some delivery components, but the stories were a little vague and this broke pretty late yesterday. But it sounds like you get like free installation, you get Geek Squad service whenever you need it around, who knows if it's around the clock, I'm making that up, but basically whenever you need it. So you're kind of liking this idea. Kristen, what do you think? You liking this?
I mean, I was super impressed with how they really built out the Geek Squad, I don't know, many years ago into something that really transformed their whole business model. I think this is an extension of it. So yeah, I'm a huge fan.
So you're pro Best Buy Beta. Okay, talk about alliteration. How about you, Ann?
One of the reasons why we love this podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Alliteration. Sometimes retail news, but mostly alliteration. That's good. That's what we're going for. When I first saw this, I was like, yeah, that's steep, but get it while the getting's good, Best Buy. I mean, people are willing to pay this, yearly subscription. I think for me, I initially thought like, okay, I immediately go to AppleCare and how does this stack up against AppleCare and how many people are willing to pay for that? Did a little digging, the extended warranty business is like a multi-billion-dollar business projected to increase like another 10% in the next 2 years. So I think there's money to be had here. There's value here. I'm just curious, like how much electronics is one person or one family household purchasing in 1 year? Does it make sense to be spending this $200 every year on appliances? And like that to me, I throw out that question. I don't know that me as a consumer, I'm going to jump on this train, but I guess if you are like, if I was buying a brand new MacBook or something, this does include Apple products on top of the Apple warranty. So I would consider doing this for Best Buy just to expand that universe. And then finally, I think it does keep people in the Best Buy universe again, instead of going to Amazon for other electronics. Like it keeps your regulars coming back to Best Buy, which is a great concept for Best Buy.
I think you just sold me on this, Ann. But Dave, I think I was like kind of okay, it's cool, but like now I'm like all in on this. But Dave, what do you think? Where are you?
I think you have to take this as a pilot. I think I think conceptually it's a great idea. I do think the warranties is a big component of this, and they can get really pricey, especially on big ticket items. But for me, the $199 intro price, it's a beta, it's a test. I imagine that number will come down over time as they realize that adoption is not that high at that high price point. But I think the concept of the program makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I love it for all of what you guys just said. I mean, like to me, there's 3 things here. Like, first of all, it's a test. So who cares? Like if no one does it, no one does it. Like you lose nothing. So whenever we see these subscription things, I'm always like, this is cool. Just try it. Let's see what the hell happens. Right. And you're having people give you $200 a year that they weren't giving you before. So that's great. So that's one. I just think that's hella smart. The second point, and like what you said, this puts you in the mind with Best Buy around service, right? And what's one of those things that brings you to a physical store over time? Well, it's the confidence in the purchase that you're making, or brings you even back to their entire properties digitally and physically. So I think that's an important consideration. So it's just from a branding perspective, adding to that whole cachet with what the Best Buy brand is. But here's the more important point that I didn't think about, Ann, until you just said what you said, which is think about where this world's going. Like it's going smart. And smart home implementations are not easy. They're very disparate. They're hard to do, but yet those are going to be more prolific here as we go forward. And so would a certain class of people pay a certain amount of money to have somebody be at their beck and call to come and make sure that their whole home is set up and working right? I think there's going to be more activity in that space because that is just really hard for the average person to understand. Am I crazy? Ann, you're shaking your head. You agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with it. I mean, yeah, I hadn't thought about that part of it, but I think that answers my question of how much are you buying from Best Buy in a year typically now, and yes, you're right, it's only going to increase as we continue to go forward. So it makes a lot of sense.
From your ring doorbell to your
Right.
electronic refrigerator to your TV, right? I mean,
it makes Best Buy a one-stop shop. And how many of these, like to David's point too, like how many of these subscriptions do you need to have?
Yeah, and the only thing I don't love about this though, if I was to be really critical, is I freaking hate the name, like Best Buy Beta. Like, could we not come up with
who
something
cares
better than that? Like, and by the way, why is it always Beta or Alpha? Like, why can't we use other Greek letters like Best Buy Tau or Best Buy New? Like, what the hell's the difference?
They're being reserved for hurricanes right now, Chris. So just get off the Greek letters. Who cares what it's called?
Right, and 20-year-old parties, right? Anyway, okay, enough. I digress. Let's keep on moving. And you got story number 3.
Okay, well, while a pandemic might seem like an odd time to pilot a reusable cup program, Starbucks says screw it and is full steamed oat milk ahead on this concept. So
Very
according
nice.
to Chain Store Age, is a mom joke. According to Chain Store Age, customers at participating Starbucks can now order their hot or cold beverage in a newly designed reusable cup. When customers finish their beverage, they scan their cup at the store's contactless return kiosk or drive-through and drop the cup in the kiosk. They can then scan their Starbucks app to receive a $1 credit to their Starbucks rewards and 10 bonus points. In case you're wondering, Starbucks has also partnered with Ridwell, which offers the home pickup service for these reusable cups and hard to recycle items so that customers have a second option for returning their borrowed cup. Now, Kristen, I'm going to go to you on this one because when we had our interview with you a couple weeks ago, you mentioned sustainability as one of the biggest opportunities that retailers should be paying attention to, but that they aren't. Do you think that this is the right approach for Starbucks?
so you mean you're asking me to walk my walk here?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay,
It's not hang tags, but it's cups. What should they do?
So first, overall, big shout out to Starbucks for doing something in this area. So, right, clap, clap. But second, one of the things when we talked about it on the last podcast with you is, is this actually going to be better for the environment? So is this really going to reduce the carbon footprint? And is it being done in a way for the customer, through a customer lens, that's easy for the customer and makes sense for them at their price point, et cetera? So yes, shout out to Starbucks for doing this, but to the second point, does it really reduce their overall footprint? I mean, maybe they're not using as many disposable cups, but you got to think about the process of getting the cup, cleaning the cup, returning the cup, right? So if you look at it end to end, is it really reducing everything? And then lastly, from a customer lens, I don't know, to me, that seems like a big hurdle. I'd rather just, take my Yeti mug, go there, have them fill my Yeti mug with coffee, take my own mug home, clean it and bring it back and be incented to do that. So why can't I get extra points for doing that versus using one of their mugs?
Interesting. So you don't see the brand hook on the consumer side. So 2 things. You don't see the brand hook necessarily on the consumer side for this. And then also you're still curious about net how much impact it really would have. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Like, way to take a stand too on the spot. Yeah. What do you think on that?
So I'm going back to the Best Buy story where I think that this is a brilliant idea for your regulars. Like for the people who are hardcore right now, I think right now we'll start to see this. They're going to the same Starbucks every day at the same time. And so to bring your cup back and to get $1 off every single day, like that adds up. That's $20 off of coffee over the course of a month if you're going, 5 times a week.
It's like one more latte a month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
But I do, to Kristen's point, I am having some scary flashbacks to childhood, to the can recycling centers outside of our local grocery store where it's just people lined up and I don't know, bees flying around and getting stung while you're trying, there's just a lot of logistics stuff that is still what is that kiosk? I know it's contactless, but what exactly is happening there and how are these going to be cleaned? And there's still a lot of big question marks for me on how, but I think Starbucks of all people will figure this out.
Emma, you're the youngest here, at least I assume so, but a pretty good factor here. But what's the Gen Z take on this? What do you think?
that this is pretty cool. I'm glad that they're like doing it as a test since they're only doing it in a couple Seattle stores for now.
Okay.
It's something I would definitely use if I was going to Starbucks frequently. But I think to everyone's points, like, I don't think there's any impact to be had unless this is like a very widespread thing. But at the same time, I mean, I worked in coffee. I don't think there is any way to reduce your net impact on the earth, no matter what you do as a coffee shop.
It's just kind of that business.
It's what it is. Yeah.
Dave, what do you think?
I guess I'm a contrarian here. I think it's awesome. I love it.
I'm with you, man.
I mean,
Okay.
I think if I think about the number of people that go through a Starbucks in a day globally and take the cup, that's got to have an impact. Now, maybe if you did some significant or really sophisticated analysis, you might find that the carbon footprint wasn't, perfect. But I love it. I think there's two big things though that I think Starbucks is going to have to figure out. Is Starbucks is a really peak time business. This can't slow down their ability to put people through the shop, right? And I think having a permanent cup that you can't write on is going to mess up workflows. And I think there's a lot to get right there. And then the second is, I think everyone's already echoed it, so I'll just be short and sweet. Health and hygiene and safety here feel like a real challenge that they're going to have to make everyone real comfortable with, because it could end up with Anne's kind of bees buzzing around a recycle bin perspective if you've got a wealth of dirty coffee dripping all over the back of the Starbucks. So you could imagine it being real gross real fast if it's not properly managed.
If the shop's not run right. And you guys made me think of something again. And do you remember the trip we took to Starbucks when we were heading up Target's work for the Store of the Future? Like we went there. And it was really cool because they showed us their process, right? And I think that's an important context for this situation too, is my hunch. I don't know this for sure, but they have a big employee store there. And everything they do, they test out through that store. And then they have a very overt like stage gate process to all their pilot implementations before anything rolls out. So that makes me think, like, at least on the branding side, in terms of the consumer acceptance of this, that like they've already seen some good data that is showing that consumers are interested in this. And I think to you guys' point, like the crazy thing to me about this from having run stores is just all the operational dynamics. Like you're changing your flow. Mm-hmm. And Starbucks had to do that with order pickup. Now they're saying, we're going to do this and we're going to figure out how to wash cups and place cups and take cups back. And they're also doing this at home, which is crazy. Like there's a delivery service that's involved in this. They're not afraid to break a few eggs trying to figure that out. And again, I think it's probably stage gated too. And
yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, Chris, of the locations of these kiosks. Like, I think this makes more sense in the type of environment that you're talking about with Starbucks headquarters, or like even when we were at Target where there's a Starbucks in that environment, like that makes sense to drop off my cups on my way out instead of recycling them or doing whatever. Like that is smart. I think you do run into some issues when you're talking about the general public at large and Starbucks.
So if you had to pick which size Starbucks cup you are with this idea, let's go around the horn. Dave, are you Venti? Is that what you are?
Venti, absolutely. Venti black.
Trenta.
You're Trenta. You're Trenta. Emma?
Grande.
You're Grande. Kristen, back to you. Have you changed your mind? Or are you still like, what's the one that's lower than tall? I don't even know.
Short.
Short.
I mean, look, I like the big bold move as I started with, so I'm going to stick with Grande. I'm with Emma. I'm with ETI on that one.
Grande. Okay. I think I'm probably like what is Venti? I think I'm Venti because this is just bold. This is bold. And those guys are so bold. They're probably the boldest retailer out there on the experimentation side. All right. Speaking of experimentation and changing the way retail works, store number 4, Nordstrom, this week announced that it plans to expand its market strategy to 10 additional markets. Those markets include Atlanta, Austin, Denver, Detroit, Houston, Miami, Minneapolis, Portland, San Diego, and West Palm Beach. Now, for those that are familiar with this, just to give you a little bit of background, a few years ago, Nordstrom started what they called a market strategy, where essentially, this is a quote from them, they're letting their customers shop and engage when, where, and how they want, regardless of whether it's in-store or online at Nordstrom or Nordstrom Rack, Nordstrom Local even probably. And their strategy is focused on delivering convenience and connection by leveraging all of their assets of people, product, and places across top markets, end quote. The whole idea here is, again, not to think by channels, but to think by market, similar to how an e-commerce venture would think about their cohorts of customers. And Dave and Kristen have already been put on the spot. I think they need a little bit of a break here. What is your take? You don't buy this at all. You think this is fluffy.
Okay, let me clarify. It's not that I don't buy it, but I think this is PR for Nordstrom doing what they've already done for a really long time. The biggest thing of note, the biggest thing that or the headline I guess I would be putting out there is that they're shifting exactly what you said. It's about market now, not individual store against individual store. That is smart omnichannel retailing. That makes sense. But for me, like, I'm curious for the group too. Like, when was the last time you felt like you were waiting or that Nordstrom wasn't meeting your expectations when it came to service and getting products? Like, when was that? Because I've been a loyal Nordstrom customer for a long time. And I would say that their service level standard has always been such a high standard that I've never felt like I'm missing out on products. I'm missing out on assortment. I'm waiting for packages for too long. Like, they're just so good at communicating that. And that's always been part of their standard of service that I just feel like maybe it's happening behind the scenes and that's what they're trying to put out there. But I'm not all for this PR announcement. So that's what
you
I
think
have
it's
to
just
say
PR.
about
Okay,
that.
you think it's more PR. Interesting, fascinating. This blows my mind.
I do.
Kristen, what do you think? You've had some experience in this space. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, I agree with Anne that what really is different about this. I mean, we talked at the last podcast, and I'm a big believer that the customer is the channel these days, right? So everything revolves around them. Yes, but that's not new news. This isn't saying anything that different. I guess my question would be, if they're really going to this market approach, are they going to start measuring themselves that way? So instead of like store comp, it's market comp, and you include in there kind of the digital piece. So how far are they taking this? And, are they really putting their money where their mouth is on this one?
Dave, what do you think?
I actually like it a little bit more, I think, than the group has said. I agree that this is an evolution of the Nordstrom's model as opposed to transformation. But if you heard this from another department store that was not as forward-leaning as Nordstrom's, you'd think this was transformational, right? So in some ways, I think it's Nordstrom's starting point that is making this not seem like such a big deal. I mean, the consumer does want to pick up their goods wherever they are. So it feels like they are being customer first and as convenient as they possibly can for the consumer with them in mind. So I like it. I mean, if it wasn't Nordstrom's, I think we'd be singing much more of its praises.
Dude, that is such an amazing point. Like, it's also scary to me how much I'm thinking like you on this podcast right now. But like, yeah, for context, like we first heard about this strategy. I think that's part of it too, Ann. It's like we first heard about this strategy in 2019 from Eric Nordstrom on stage at Shop Talk. Right. And we were blown away because we were like, that is how you have to think about it. And yet you still read so many earnings reports quarterly where they're not taking that approach. They're not doing what Kristen said, where they're talking about what are the financials from a market-based approach. They're just looking at everything, store comps, traditional metrics, Kohl's, Macy's, everybody. Dave, you're dead right. If Macy's did this, I would be the first person out there in the media saying, this is freaking great. Freaking great if more people were doing this. So yeah, hopefully more people kind of get on the train with this or get on the bandwagon. Emma, what do you think? Last word.
I love it. I think like just comparing like Nordstrom's that exist on the East Coast out to the Midwestern ones, like they're so different. The East Coast ones cater truly to the people who live out there, and they need to like expand that market idea and be more involved and interested in like creating that kind of dynamic.
It also slows the brakes, I think, on like all the like hype around like Nordstrom local or what are the different things you're doing in different areas. It lets you just say, hold on, let us just understand that by market, media and analysts before you like rush to think that these are all the right answers everywhere. Just not that dissimilar to what we were just talking about with Starbucks, and like how you talked about, okay, what's the right spot to implement something like this? Is it corporate stores? Is it your garden variety store? Like those types of things matter and they take time. All right, Ann, let's close this up.
Oh, this is a great one. I love this story. So according to Fortune, sources say that Amazon is exploring opening discount retail stores, selling a mix of home goods and electronics, which would be a potentially significant expansion of the company's growing portfolio of brick and mortar locations. These outlets would carry unsold inventory that is currently sitting in Amazon warehouses at steep discounts. And you bet your buns I'm bringing the Amazon Mall conversation back into this. This is a perfect example because this is a perfect example of what we hear people say is you can't turn malls into fulfillment centers. because they look like fulfillment centers and nobody wants a fulfillment center. Well, what do you put on the front of that mall then? What's the front of house? What's the customer facing experience for these Amazon distribution centers? An outlet center that's taking all the stuff that gets shipped back and now it's putting it available for people that are going to come in droves for this kinds of stuff. You got to be kidding me. Or you can take returns in this spot. Like, it's a perfect front face for an Amazon mall concept. We heard it in the news this week. 25 in the last 2 years, they've already converted into Amazon distribution centers. So I absolutely love this.
That is a really great point. Yeah, 25 malls have already been converted. I didn't think about that. Wayfair is already doing this model too at some of their distribution centers, which aren't as nicely located as probably the malls that Amazon's been buying up. Kristen, what do you think?
I mean, I'm with Ann. This to me is a win-win-win. I would go Venti on this one if we were talking Starbucks.
That's going to be the measurement standard for all stories going forward.
I love how stuff just comes like out of nowhere. Like, wow, we have a new measurement scale. Starbucks will be so proud. So you're huge into this. Dave, what do you think?
So listen, I think the concept of failing mall retail plus the discount channel plus a liquidation market for Amazon it's almost certainly a viable option for the consumer. I think if I was going to throw one wrench in the thing, it is, will nicer malls that have a JCPenney or something open, would they be open to this format? And I don't know if that's the case. I think it would have to be in the B and C malls that are struggling more as opposed to in the nicer malls. But who knows? I mean, if you designed the customer facing elements of the concept and it didn't drag the concept down. It's hard to drag malls down, by the way, at this point. Who knows? I think it's a great idea to explore.
Well, I think point of clarification, Ann, too, I don't think we necessarily need to attach this idea to malls either. Like,
right.
Just the idea of standalone discount stores is intriguing in and of itself and could be an idea here. I mean, from my standpoint, like in 2019, I wrote an article in Forbes about what would happen if you took like the TJ Maxx operation, the discount store operation, and you combined it with computer vision technology. So where essentially you have like Macy, discounted goods or maybe even return goods like you guys are talking about. And computer vision is in place where all that stuff gets easily cataloged through camera technology. And people just come in and shop and take what they want, almost like a flea market, right? You just come in and get it. That's a total treasure hunt thing. And so like, Amazon Go has been out there for 3 years now. Who's to say that they're not looking at that type of thing for other product categories outside of grocery? And who's not going to be able to keep up with them if they do that? And this is going to allow them to experiment is TJX and Ross and everybody the hell else. They're going to be like asleep at the wheel. And this whole business, especially when you think about returns and how much they're growing, it's just there for the taking. Like, Emma, would you shop at a place like that?
Absolutely. Like, think about, I know you ignoring malls, but in the Mall of America, that Sears location has been open forever. Do you know how many people would go to an Amazon outlet that's at the Mall of America?
It's just like all the returns product for the return product for Minneapolis. Oh God, yeah, that's a great point. They'd come from Iowa.
They would. Yeah.
And get a Starbucks on the way. Like they totally would. Kristen, what do you think? Anything else you'd add here?
I guess, I go back to just, how much retail space there is out there. And I think about growing up, we had the old mall and the new mall, right? And now the new mall is really even an old mall. And these places just lay vacant. So talk about repurposing these spaces in multiple markets. I think they can grow very quickly, very fast. I guess my question is, who do we think it hurts the most? Does it hurt the TJXs of the world the most? Does it hurt the Dollar Generals of the world? Like who do we think it really impacts the most?
And what do you think?
I mean, I in my notes as we were prepping for this, I think that who it hurts the most is the other malls potentially. Like now, if you're going to have a mall, I think you're going to be in direct competition with Amazon. I think like it's just that's who you're going to compete with. They're able to take their footprint, leverage the technology that Chris mentioned, and create this experience. Even as Dave was saying, like, I think your Amazon concept is already an elevated level. It's not like you're throwing like Bill's crazy discount corner in the empty JCPenney. This is like a high-end, high-tech high-end customer facing concept that, as they continue to take up more and more of these malls, like you're going to have to compete with all of the offerings of Amazon in order to survive. Again, this is a new category.
Dave.
I mean, I think it actually is just as dangerous for the Best Buys of the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Really a highly discounted product that's of a similar quality level in a world where you can actually compare apples to apples. I mean, this is showrooming kind of at its worst. They can go get the exact same product, at a huge discount. I think I'd be really worried if I was a traditional consumer electronics or furniture player.
Yeah, and where do you go for? I'd add the furniture side too. I think that's important, and that's probably the business I know the best. Like, where do you go for furniture in the physical world anymore for great prices? Like, your only options are like, maybe you go for home goods for like a treasure hunt find, or maybe like a Target or a Walmart. Wayfair's been asleep at the wheel trying to get their store strategy off the ground. I can't believe how goddamn long that's taking them. And so now they're going to let Amazon come in with better technology, which, by the way, sign me up to see that, because I would love to see what happens to Wayfair's business as a result of that. But, and take the last word.
Where do you go for everything? I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
It's not
Good
just
point.
electronics. It's not just home furnishings. Amazon has everything. So everything at a lower price. And to Dave's point, you can compare that right then and there.
No, you're right. And it's right. You're right. It's like, it's where it's most convenient to you. The other story this week that broke that we didn't even cover, like Amazon Go is now at the Boston Garden. You go to a Celtics game and there it is, right? Like we've talked about how it's when you get out of tourist locations in London, like it's coming, it's everywhere. All right. Well, that wraps us up. That was awesome. I had a total blast. Like, Dave, I thought mic drop on that point too, around that you made around a Macy's. I thought that was killer. Like, that was just fantastic. We are off next week. So programming notes. So we are going to take a break. Believe it or not, I think Ann, Em, and I have done this podcast for every week, almost for more than a year now. So we're going to take a much deserved break, but we will be back in 2 weeks. Happy birthday today to John Schneider. Ann, do you know who that is?
No.
Kristen, do you know who that is?
No.
No?
It's such a basic name. Give us some more context,
Schneider.
please.
Wait, I think thinking cowboy show. Is that right?
Yeah. Keep going. Yes.
Okay. Police. Is it no.
Bo Duke. Bo Duke.
Bo Duke, yeah.
Bo Duke. John Schneider, Broadway actor.
Duke.
Also, Edward Mulhare, who played Michael Knight's boss, Devin Miles on Knight Rider, and then, of course, Patricia Arquette. So, around the horn, favorite Arquette. And
David.
Kristen.
Patricia.
I'm David also.
You're David. Dave's Patricia. Emma, do you even know who we're talking about?
I've heard the name, but I don't know what you're talking about.
God, you guys, well, you said David and Patricia. I'm going Rosanna, man. Rosanna's been she's good stuff. I like Desperately Seeking Susan. Come on, right? Good times. All right, remember, if you can only read or listen to one retail blog in the business, make it OmniTalk. Our Fast Five podcast is the quickest, fastest rundown of all the week's top news. And our twice weekly newsletter tells you the top 5 things you need to know each day, and also features special content exclusive to us and just for you, all within the preview pane of your inbox. You can sign up today at www.omnitalk.blog. Thanks as always for listening in. Please remember to like and leave us a review wherever you happen to listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Thanks for sure to our special guests today, Kristen Kohler-Burrows and David Ritter of the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. Guys, if people want to get in touch with you, if they're like, hey, I want to learn more about what you were talking about or just learn more about A&M, what's the best way for them to do that?
Everyone can just reach out directly. We're both on LinkedIn and pretty easily accessible there, or you can email us directly. I'm dritter@alvarezandmarsal.com. And Kristen, you can please feel free to give your email address as well.
Sure, I'm just kburrows@alvarezandmarsal.com.
K Burrows.
Or just call me Venti. Venti@alvarezandmarsal.com.
Venti Burrows. That's the new name.
You're getting Trenta insights if this podcast is anything from A&M. Thanks so much, you guys, for being a part of it.
This podcast is also highly caffeinated, by the way, for sure. All right. And last but not least, as always, to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in and be careful out there. The OmniTalk Fast Five is sponsored by the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. The A&M Consumer and Retail Group is a management consulting firm that tackles the most complex challenges and advances its clients, people, and communities toward their maximum potential. CRG brings the experience, tools, and operator-like pragmatism to help retailers and consumer products companies be on the right side of disruption. And Takeoff. Takeoff is transforming grocery by empowering grocers to thrive online. The key is micro-fulfillment, small robotic fulfillment centers that can be leveraged at a hyper-local scale. Takeoff also offers a robust software suite so grocers can seamlessly integrate the robotic solution into their existing businesses. To learn more, visit takeoff.com.